Well, welcome back. I'm back to continue this story, and I hope you're back from listening to the first half of it. And where we left off from my first tale was that my brother and I had hitchhiked from Fort Worth, Texas, to Berkeley, California, to visit another brother, and this was over Christmas break when I was a senior in high school. And the one thing I didn't mention in that last video was that I had these hiking boots that I did talk about, these Pavetta fine Italian mountaineering boots. And I guess I was like careless, and when I took those boots off to climb into Mick's van, one of them fell out. And so we get a day and a half later, sometime down the road, discover that I've only got one boot. Luckily, I had a pair of Clark's Wallabies, Clark's Chuckaboot in my pack, and so I was able to pull those out and wear those the rest of the time. So now we're in Berkeley, California. We got there, and my brother says, well, let's go to Lake Tahoe and go ski. Well, I never skied a day in my life. So, and back then, or right now, or nowadays, it might not seem so, well, yeah, let's go to Lake Tahoe. Well, that was kind of a crazy idea for us to want to go to Lake Tahoe and go skiing. So that's what we did. We drove to Lake Tahoe, and there's only a couple of things I really remember about that, and one was that the highway was a tunnel, a canyon through the snow, and the snow had been plowed up and had to be 8, 10, maybe 10 feet high on either side, and we were driving down this canyon of snow, and I'd never seen anything like that before. So we went to Lake Tahoe. We tried to ski, didn't do too well at it. We rented a snowmobile and went around the track on this snowmobile, and that was it. We went back to Berkeley. Well, the next morning it was time to head home, and so we got up that morning, and it was now January the 1st, 1971, and we went down to University Avenue in Berkeley. And that's where people, if you're going anywhere out of Berkeley hitchhiking, that's what you did. You went to University Avenue and started hitchhiking. Well, there was nobody down there. There was very little traffic. This is New Year's Day, you know. So these three guys come up, and they had been up all night long, and they had just hitchhiked over from San Francisco, where they had been in Winterland, the Grateful Dead New Year's Eve party in Winterland, which was a very notable kind of now sort of famous party that they had there for couple of years. And these guys were a bit out of it, of course. And they got a ride and left, and they were just going someplace not very far away, but we stayed there, and as it turned out, finally, as it's getting very late in the day, we got an offer of a ride to San Jose, down towards the southern end of San Francisco Bay, and that's all the ride we could get, and so we decided to take it, and we took that ride, and we went down. And we got let off down there, and that's when our troubles began. It started to rain, and that rain would follow us all the way to our last ride that would finally take us home. So a fella pulls up in not too long, so we're just sort of trying to figure out what to do, trying to hitchhike, standing there in the rain coming down. This guy pulls up, and as we call or referred to these folks back in those days, he was a Jesus freak. He was a Christian who God had told him that some people out there on the road needed help, So he came out to give us a ride. So he didn't take us real far, but he dropped us off next to a restaurant that was right next to the highway, and we could stand under the overhang of the restaurant right next to the highway. So we'd be out of the rain hitchhiking, and that would help. And again, I don't remember, but I don't think we waited all that long, and I think the next ride we got, maybe there was another ride in there, I don't remember, but we got a ride from a guy going to Los Angeles. And now it's nighttime. So we're riding with this guy all night long to Los Angeles. Well, by that time we were exhausted, and we just basically passed out in the back of his car there, dead cold, sound asleep. And we slept all night until we got to Los Angeles and got out. And we got out of that car and we kind of laughed to ourselves. We said, man, I bet that guy is just cussing us. He was probably hoping we'd stay there and talk to him and keep him awake all night, but no, didn't happen. So we got this, I don't remember. One thing I do remember is we didn't have near the trouble getting across and through the Los Angeles area as we did when we were coming out. And this time we were up more north of Interstate 10, and we were running some smaller highway along sort of the base of the mountains there. And again, I don't remember much about the rides, but I know somewhere along the way we've got a ride either from there to Goodyear, Arizona, or it may have been that guy, but I think it was a ride that we got after that from Goodyear, Arizona. We got a ride. And this guy, we stop, of course, it's the middle of this, again, getting back into the middle of the night. And he pulls up at a convenience store, and there's gas pumps out there. And he fills up, and he stands there and he looks around. And he goes, well, if they're not going to come out and get the money for the gas, the heck with them. And he gets in the car and drives off. So he stole a tank of gas from this place. So we drove off, you know. We're just sitting there in the car going like, man. And this guy, and I have no idea where that gas convenience store was, but he takes us, and we're coming into El Paso, and we're on the west side, and there's an exit there for the University of Texas at El Paso. And he says, oh, and he was planning on going. I remember we were going to be with him. We thought, wow, we got a good ride here. And he was going somewhere on beyond El Paso, and I don't remember where. But anyway, he gets off at the El Paso exit, and he says, yeah, I got friends, or a friend here at going to college, and I'm going to go stay with him or visit him or something like that. So he pulls up, he gets off the exit, he pulls over, we get out of the car, and he gets in the car, he drives down, he makes a U-turn, gets right back on the interstate and takes off. He was just, I guess, glad to get rid of us. I think maybe he was maybe that gas thing explained it. Maybe he was hoping we would be buying him gas, and since we weren't going to do that, maybe he would move on to greener pastures, find some hitchhiker that would pay for gas or something. But anyway, somehow we end up on the other side of El Paso. I don't remember how the ride we got there, but again, every time we get out, there's some rain, there's some weather that we're having to deal with every time we get out. So we get to the east side of El Paso, and it's starting to sleet. Rain mixed with ice, sleet, the wind's blowing, and the wind does blow in El Paso at times. And the good thing was that exit, there was like a Denny's or something, and I remember going in, and I had enough money to buy breakfast there, and it took me forever to eat it. I was definitely exhausted and probably in the first stages of hypothermia. But I ate and then went back out, and these two fellas, shortly thereafter, these two guys pull up, and they offer us a ride. and they're going to Dallas. Here we are in El Paso. These guys are going to Dallas. So we get a ride all the way home. That's what's happening here. But we go up there, and he says, okay. So he opens the trunk of the car so we can put our packs in there. And he goes, hey, let me show you something. And he lifts up the carpeting and stuff that cover the well for the spare tire. And he lifts that up. And sitting in the well there with this, where the spare tire would be, are 2 bricks, 2 kilos of marijuana sitting. These bricks are in this thing. And I go, we kind of go, oh, wow, that is something. He covers it up. We put our packs in, and off we go. So we're heading off, and everything goes okay. We back in those days, and maybe they still, I haven't been out there in years, but they had a border patrol checkpoint along the interstate out there east of El Paso, and we went through that. And of course, in those days, they didn't have drug sniffing dogs or any of that kind of stuff. You know, if they wanted to search you, then they'd have to hand search the vehicle, which they decide, you know, they just as they did back, they usually do too. I think I ask you what nationality, what country are you a citizen of, and that was it. I don't remember much more than that, and we rode with these guys all the way across West Texas, and we get to Fort Worth, and they drop us off the exit, and they get off the exit. We walk over to the Kip's Big Boy restaurant, which we went in there to use the payphone. No cell phones back then. Use the payphone. And we went in there, and I looked up there, and to this day, I can see that clock on the wall. It said 10 minutes after 7. So it was 7 o'clock, 10 minutes after 7 that evening. And the next morning at 8 o'clock, school started. I was going back to finish the spring term of high school and graduate from high school then. And that was the end of that story. We made it through that. The coming home, as it always seems to be, was the much tougher road, and some lessons learned there is when you're hitchhiking, there's no telling who's going to give you a ride, and it's like criminality could be involved, and there's just no telling what you're going to step into, you know. But the next big question for us was, what are we going to do next Christmas break? What will we do? I think we've kind of decided, well, it's a tradition now. We have to go on a trip at Christmas break. And that'll be that'll be my next story. That'll be the next story, the next tale in my series here. And I hope you've gotten something out of this, and maybe actually enjoyed it. And we'll continue on as always to the next ride.